snap. And we are live. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by and hanging out. As I always say, y'all could have been anywhere doing anything, but y'all chose to come hang out on the channel. So that's awesome, man. I think that's really cool. So yeah, we're just gonna have some fun tonight. Haven't had time to record my vocals for the song yet, so I definitely want to do it right. I want to do it justice. I want it to be a good example of what can be improved upon, and giving you an A and B comparison from the rough draft recording, and then a recording that where a little more time is being spent on the recording, on the delivery, on the energy, the emotion, adding color to it, that type of stuff, making it really come to life even more. So I hope to be able to do that by next Wednesday. So that's the game plan anyways. And as you know, you can plan a pretty picnic, but you cannot predict the weather. Quote Outcast, Miss Jackson. One of my those quotes that just have stuck with me throughout the years. So anyways, I'm going to start this off by telling a little story. I've touched on this a little bit in the past, but the question came up last week. What's up, Sam? I see you. And someone was asking, Cole, how did you get into rapping? And it's a good question. So let me just kind of share that with y'all a little bit, because something that's really important never to forget is the beginning. Never forget the beginning. That's important for so many different reasons. For an example, when you start developing in anything, you're likely going to come across moments of frustration. Moments where you may think about giving up. A lot of times that frustration is caused because of a loss of perspective. Perspective is how you view things. Like the glass is half empty or is it half full? How do you look at it? And perspective is so important. Your mindset shapes your reality. And life is it's about 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. If you think about that, there's people serving life sentences in prison just because of the way they responded to something. It doesn't necessarily make them a bad person, just the way they responded to it, and they happen to have gotten caught. So when it comes to any craft, anything that you're pursuing in life, whether it be a business or a skill that you're trying to get better at or whatever it is, it's important to never lose sight of the beginning, on where you came from. We hear that term all the time with people who get famous and they get rich. You always hear them say, man, don't forget where you came from. And it's important not to. For an example, when you're practicing any craft, you're gonna reach these moments of frustration. You're gonna reach moments where you think, you know what, maybe I just don't have what it takes. Maybe I'm just not skilled enough. I'm not talented enough. Whatever. I don't look good enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not old enough. I don't have the right personality. I don't talk about the things that everyone's going to want to hear. Those type of thoughts. And it's important to never forget where you came from, because what happens is when you lose sight of where you started, you lose perspective of how far you've already come. Because sometimes we're only looking at where we want to be at, and we're comparing that to where we are. And we can see that as being such a distant thing. But we don't take the moment to look the other way and see, wow, how far we've already come. And that's the thing. That's what you cannot lose sight of, is where you began. So let me talk about that a little bit. Where did I begin? Back in the day when dinosaurs used to roam the earth. The year was about 1995. I remember that so vividly. When I started in elementary school, the first elementary school I went to from kindergarten on up to around third grade was a predominantly white school. It was right down the street from my house in the country, literally in the middle of a field. And my brother had what you may call a behavior problem. I still remember I remember one time I was walking down the hallway and I remember hearing him getting beaten that's when we used to get whippings still in school. He was probably acting up. He's a class clown. And he's just a really funny dude. So that can be an issue sometimes when you're in school. But we had some issues with one of his teachers as well. So anyways, we got went to the other elementary school on the other side of town, and that's where all the black people was at. And it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me because that's where I found music. I found music before I even found rap. I grew up around rap, but when I went to that school, I got way more submerged in rap music. I remember I didn't realize this until later on once I grew up. I look back to that look back at my elementary school and I was like, wow, my elementary school was pretty ghetto, like in a cool way, not like a bad way. Cause I remember one of my math teachers, if we was really good and well behaved, she would let us listen to rap music for like the last 5-10 minutes of class. And this is '95, so this is when hit songs like Coolio Gangsta's Paradise first came out. Tupac was hitting the scene. Eminem would be dropping Infinite about a year from this time. Busta Rhymes had just came out with I get that head knocker to make you break your neck. Woo-wah! I got you all in check. Bone Thugs and Harmony was hitting the scene. Man, there was so much Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg. I mean, you name it. Like, Crucial Conflict. Y'all probably don't know about them. Crucial Conflict had just hit the scene. I mean, it was so much good music coming out. That was also the booty bass era where you had artists like 69 Boys and stuff like that. And it was like at that point in time, it was kind of like the modern day trap music of the time where it was all party based. So anyways, I joined the band. I played saxophone, alto saxophone. I started in the third grade. At the end of the third grade, once we transitioned from one school to the other. And I remember it was like towards the last week of school. I remember my friend pulled out this big gold thing. And I'm like, whoa, like, what is that? That looks like really expensive. And he told me it's a saxophone. And I said, it's a saxophone? Like, what? He said, no, sax, S-A-X, like wax with an S. I said, oh, okay. And I was like, wow, that must have cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars, man. That's like pure gold. He's like, nah, it's not gold, it's brass. I'm like, brass? What's that? And I remember he pulled it out and I heard him playing it. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And he actually came back like a day or so later and he actually like took the initiative to bring me the serial number of his saxophone. And I was able to give that to my mom and she ended up getting me a saxophone and I ended up joining the competition band. And I learned so much in this competition band because our teacher was really hard on us. His name was Mr. Colbert. Won't never forget him. He reminds me of Denzel Washington. That's how intense those classes could be. He demanded nothing but perfection from us, and he pushed us really hard. And because of that, we went on to win several statewide competitions in band. And once again, I didn't know this at the time until I got older, but a lot of the music we was playing was like soul music, like Al Green and the Temptations and stuff like that. And and so it was about a year or so after that in 5th grade, 95, when for whatever reason, man, I remember hearing Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise. And that song just captivated me. Like I just became obsessed with that song. And I think it had a lot to do with the melody of the hook. I just really liked the instrumental. And this is before like Rap Genius, before Google. There was no video on the internet at the time. You wasn't listening to music streaming. There was no streaming anything that I was aware of anyways. And we were still dialing up on the internet with 56K modems. You get kicked off if someone called your house because you're using the phone as your internet connection. And I remember I had got my first boombox that year. And it had the CD player, it had the 2 cassette decks, A and B, and it had the radio tuner on it. And you couldn't tell me nothing, man. It was wireless. You know, you could put batteries in it or you could hook it up in the wall. I got it for my birthday. And I bought that Gangsta's Paradise album, and I remember listening to the song Gangsta's Paradise, and I'd play it over and over and over and over again. And I remember sitting outside as a kid in the 5th grade, and I would sit there and just play it back, you know, and just start writing down all the lyrics. And it took me a while because it was hard for me to understand everything that was being said because rapping can be fast. It's not like just normal slow speaking or anything like that. And and that's when I realized that wow, this isn't easy. Like this takes skill. And that's when I really first really appreciated rap music, when I realized how difficult it was. And I remember telling myself that wow, it sounds easy. He makes it sound easy, but it's not easy. And I memorized that whole song from start to finish. I remember I could not wait until that song came on if we was hanging out at school and it was playing it, or at the school dance or wherever. I couldn't wait for that song to come on, because you know how you have your friend, or maybe you're that guy, when the song comes on and you only know like a certain part, and then when that certain part comes up, like you stand up, you get in the front of everybody and you like, yeah, and you start singing real loud, and then you kind of fade off in the background once you forget the rest of the lyrics. Well, I was so proud of knowing that song. I remember rapping it everywhere I went. And that's when I think I fell in love with rap music. It was so much fun to rap that song. I rapped it all the time. And it was also that same year. Keep in mind, I haven't written any rap lyrics at this point in time. I haven't tried to come up with my own rhymes or anything. This is where I really fell in love with music, and then also fell in love with rap music specifically. And something tragic happened. I had a one of my good friends. It was a young black female. They used to sit right to the next to me in class, and I remember drawing. We used to draw pictures and just cut up and have fun. I remember the East Bay magazines that we'd bring in, and we'd always be looking at the newest sneakers. This is when the Grant Hill Filas was out. The Deion Sanders was huge. The Deion's, I still see people rocking them Deion Sanders shoes. It's a big deal. And that's what we used to do in class. When we had free time, we would get to look at magazines and stuff and like circle sneakers and be like, oh man, I really want those, man. And, one day she didn't, come to school, and, didn't think much about it until like the second day. And, people was like asking like, where's Kimberly at? And then that's when they told us that she had actually been killed in a house fire. And I mean, you think about when you're a kid, you don't really know how to process death, especially with someone your age. Like, y'all are kids. Y'all are supposed to live like forever, you know? And I remember struggling with that with so much, because I wasn't crying like upset. It just wasn't like real to me. And I remember that kind of bothered me, because, I see how other people respond to death, and I see people hysterical, crying all over the place. And was a really good friend of mine. And I felt like so numb in a sense, to where I was just shocked. Like, I literally remember sitting around 20, 30 minutes at a time, just trying to process it. Like, what? And I even went to her funeral. It was my first time in a black church, and that was an experience. Black church is a way more lively than a lot of the white churches I grew up going to. This black church was off the chain. And but it was at that time, being conflicted, I didn't know how to express myself. I didn't know what to say, if anything at all. And I remember walking around school between classes, and that's when I first started trying to come up with rhymes. I wasn't writing them down. I was just trying to come up with them in my head. And that's when I first started rapping, like writing my own lyrics, or formulating my own lyrics. That's where it all began for me. And I remember the satisfaction that I felt from Coolio Gangsta's Paradise, being able to rap that song. And then it just kind of fueled like, man, I wonder if I could get that good, so I could write my own stuff that sounds that good. And so the journey began. And the rest is history. That's been, 20 years ago? Something like that? Yeah. 95, 2005, 2015. Wow. More than that. It's been a minute. That's where it all began, though. I wasn't getting really serious about rapping then, but that's when it got its hooks in me. So that's how I got into it. That's a little story time for y'all. But I think it's important for me, anyways, to never forget why I started rapping. I felt like I had something to say, whether that's to one person, a million people, or if it's just for my own therapy to write, to create. I rap because I truly love it. It's not for the money. That's not the reason behind it. Definitely nothing wrong with monetizing off a talent. That's I think that's a dream for anybody, to do what you love and then figure out a way for people to pay you for it. Do what you love, it'll eventually love you back. It really will. But that's the beginning. That's where I started. It was it was love for the craft. It was me realizing it as a young kid. This isn't easy, but these people make it sound easy. And in a way, it's like when you watch people do magic tricks, sleight of hand, illusions, and stuff. It's so fascinating because you don't understand how they do it, but you see the act, you see the tricks they're doing, and it's so impressive. And that's what strikes your curiosity. Is like, man, how do they do that? How is that possible that they can make things disappear right in front of me? And then when you start digging into it, you start learning the craft, and you start learning the techniques, and something funny happens, and this trips a lot of people up. That excitement starts to kind of dwindle a little bit because the mystery of it begins to diminish, because now you're gaining understanding about something that you did not have understanding about, and it's no longer something that you don't understand. And that can trick us as creative people. This happens all the time because you're learning the magic tricks. It's no longer mysterious to you. Now you know it. It doesn't seem as special to you. A lot of people have experienced this when they're working on songs and music. When you first start working on a song, any artist, by the way, any artist, usually their favorite song that they've done is their latest song, the one they're currently working on or they just finished up. Usually they feel like that's their best song. And that could be true, or it could be due to them losing perspective, full circle. What we've been talking about this whole time is perspective, losing perspective of how good all the other songs were. Because once you spend so much time on a piece of music, you become familiar with it. Your ears are no longer shocked. They anticipate, they know what's going to happen before you hear it. And it no longer has that new car smell. It's no longer the new toy that you got for Christmas or for your birthday that you couldn't wait to get. And then you get it and you've been anticipating it for so long, and it's like, oh, it's like the skies open up and God just smiles upon you, and it's like, ah, and you're like, yes, I got that new video game, or I got that new toy or whatever. And like 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, it's like, it's cool, I like it, I've got it, but it doesn't feel the same way because it's no longer new. And so a lot of times us as artists, we lose perspective on things when it is no longer new. This happens with anything. Like a new kid in school. Like everybody wants to look at and talk to that new kid in school. And then after that kid's been there for like a week or two, he or she is just a regular. Oh, that's David, or that's Jessica, whatever. No biggie. I know them. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're working on music, and combating those negative thoughts that sometimes we have, is don't forget where you came from. And with a song, same thing applies. Don't forget how you felt when you first started working on a song, when it started to catch legs. Don't forget that feeling, because 10, 20 hours working on it later or hearing it later, you're likely not going to feel the same way. But don't forget how you did feel, because that's your indicator of how you really like the song. It's not to forget that first experience. So anyways, enough on that. Let's see what's going on with y'all. Y'all hit me with some questions. I already got one up in the queue. Thank you, Monica. Sam Bruner is asking, my friend made this beat for me, and the verses are 8 bars each, and I'm trying to extend the verse sections to 16 bars. And there's no hook section, so how do I do beat surgery correctly? Really good question, Sam. So I'm not sure what DAW or digital audio workstation you're working within, but this applies to every single one of them. The first trick is you need to figure out what the tempo of the beat is, and I have a video on that. If you search my YouTube channel, it's called "How to Detect the Tempo," or how to figure out the tempo of a song. There's multiple ways to do it. All of them work. For an example, in FL Studio, there's an actual beat detection built into it. It works very well. I use it all the time. And the trick is you wanna detect the tempo of it either by some means like FL Studio or whatever DAW if it has some type of detection software, or you may have to manually figure it out yourself using something called tap tempo, which if you search for tap tempo, I think also metronomer.com, I think it's .com, but if you just search for metronomer or tap tempo, these are metronomes that you can play from a website, and you just play your music and you literally just tap a button on the beats. And what it's doing is it's detecting the space in between each tap, and it's calculating how long you've been doing it to do a mathematical formula to give you beats per minute. So that's the first trick right there. Apart from that, the next thing you have to do is you have to line it up in the DAW in your grid. So once you figure out the tempo, you need to place that tempo inside your software, and you need to line it up in the grid. And the way that you line up in the grid, remember this, and I've taught this tons of times, so I'm sure you already know this, but typically in music, the kick falls on the first and third beat, the snare falls on the second and fourth beat. Now in music, if you just look at the waveform, you know how a waveform looks, you can see one loaded up right here in FL Studio. You see the spikes. Like let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. This track's being compressed kind of heavily, but I don't know if you can tell it from the view that you have now, but there's these spikes. You have what we call like the body of the waveform, which is like the fat solid area, and then you start having like these spikes, these little icicle looking things. These are what you call transients. Transients are basically spikes in the waveform. Now typically the transients is the kicks and the snares, because those are typically your loudest parts of music. It's typically kicks and snares, and then usually vocals sit somewhere near that, or maybe below it. So all you have to do, a lot of times in music, there'll be intros and stuff like that doesn't have any drums in them. What I like to do is once I figure out the tempo, I go into my DAW, and then I drag the transient for the first beat, which is typically the kick. I drag it to where it's right on the first beat of a bar. And it doesn't even have to be the first bar. You could drag it over, 4 bars and begin it on the 4th bar if you want to pause on the beginning or something for whatever reason. You just drag that transient over and line it up on the beat. And then from there, you usually have different functions as far as your grid goes. For an example, like when you're copy and pasting stuff, which you will be in your case, there's different functions of how things move around on the grid. Basically, it's there's one option where it moves from one bar to the next. So that's great if you're copy and pasting like a large section, like a hook or something like that, and you want to make sure it lines up perfectly when you cut it and paste it. You want to cut it evenly on a bar and paste it evenly on a bar. And so these are what we call snap functions in any grid on any DAW. And so when you first initially moving stuff around to line up the transients, you may want to select none or disable the snap function on the grid. That way you can easily just slide it around and get it perfectly how you want it. And then after that, then you remove that, or then you enable the snap function for like a bar or whatever, or quarter notes, or however you want to move around on the grid. And then you just slice the sections that you want and place them where you want them, and delete, whatever is in place that you don't want. So anyways, it sounds really complicated. It probably is. Once again, it's something I've done forever. I do it on a weekly basis. I'm cutting up instrumentals and stuff because a lot of times, I work with artists all the time, week in and week out on their songs. And sometimes they'll have an instrumental, and we want to do something differently with the song structure than what's already in the instrumental. So that's when I just simply we figured it out. We figured out how many verses we want, how many hooks, and then I'll just take out my lab coat, put my goggles on, and perform surgery. I'll be like scalpel, just do it that way. So, anyways, hopefully that helps you out. Let me know, Sam. My nemesis asks, how do I get more details into my verses? So I would say, I think it's important to know where you're going with your verses. What's the song about? If you look back at the second video of this series, or my series on writing a rap song live, you'll notice the first thing that we do is we just start brainstorming. We're just getting ideas down on, what's this song going to be about? What's this music make me feel emotionally? What ideas come to mind? And then we focus on just getting that stuff down, just ideas. We're not even talking about lyrics at this point. It's just concepts. It's just concepts, like you're about to write a movie, a short movie, 3 minutes and 30-second or whatever movie. So in order to get more details in your verses, you don't need to let your rhymes guide the verse. You need to let the concept guide the song, which will guide the verse, the bridge, the hook, all those things. So it's kind of similar to when I think of that, I think about vision. You need to have a vision for what you're trying to accomplish in your song, and that's something you need to have out the gate. You don't have to have everything understood, but you just need to know where you're trying to go with a song. What's the goal? What are you trying to convey? Is a song just like a battle rapping song where it's like braggadocious and you're just talking trash? Are you telling a story? Are you trying to speak about social issues, political issues? Are you, creating a nonfiction story? Are you, creating mysteries? Are you trying to set up really good punchlines and it's more about the jokes and it's more comedic or comic-like? Whatever the concept is, you need to have that in mind so you have a vision. And so once you have a vision for a song, then we have what you call your mission, and that's how you carry it out. And this applies with anything in life. If you want to be a different place financially in life, you need to have a vision. Just doing the same thing every day, just hoping, man, I hope I hit the lottery one day, or man, I hope something different happens for me, it's not going to cut it. You got to have a vision, and then you create a mission on how you get there. So a vision is where you're not yet at the moment. And then your mission is your strategy on how you're going to get from where you are to that place. And that's what you need for anything in life, and especially writing a song. So that's how you can get more detail into your verses, is you need to know where you're going and then use more descriptive words. Like instead of saying it was a beautiful day, you could write a whole verse on it's a beautiful day without ever saying it's a beautiful day. Because you got to think you are the artist. So the artist's goal is to paint the picture for the audience. So you don't always just have to say something like a blanket statement like it's a beautiful day. Instead, why don't you write in such a way to where it makes the listener say, man, that sounds like a beautiful day. How hot or cold is it outside? What's the sky look like? What do you hear? Do you hear birds? Do you hear children playing? Is there a lot of wind blowing leaves around in the fall time? What colors do you see? What do you smell? How do you feel? Describe that. Once you describe that, the shades, the colors, the feeling, all that stuff, and you're using words that people can relate to, that's going to allow you to paint pictures in the mind of the listener. So hopefully that helps. You may also enjoy my article that I did on my website. It's called what you should rap about, something to that effect, how to figure out what to rap about. There's so much I say on this topic, and also my article on how to write a rap song. And it's kind of going over some of the stuff I just talked about, but going into things a little bit more detail and giving you examples. So feel free to check that out. I think that's going to help you out a lot. So Brandon Schuyler said, what kind of writing style do you have, Cole? Like, do you write and that's it? Or spit a few bars or memorize your raps? Good question. Good question, Brandon. Um, my writing style varies. I've written songs every way you can imagine. I've written songs without any beat, and I write the whole song, and then I make a beat to it. I've written songs to a beat. um, it really just depends, because this is how I kind of like to think of it, Brandon. When you're creating something, there's a creative aspect of it, and then there becomes a technical aspect of it. Okay, so the creative aspect of it, that's when the juices are flowing. That's when you're getting all types of really good ideas and stuff. You need to capture that. And so in that moment, don't worry about things being perfect. What you want to do at that point is notate and write down all these creative ideas. So there's been times where, I approach a song and I'm just getting a lot of ideas, like creative ideas on ways I can flip something or tell a story in a unique way, or maybe write it from different perspectives and stuff. And so I may just jot down those ideas real quick, almost like just a brainstorm, like what we did earlier in this song that we've been working on with the whole rap community. And from there, as soon as I start listening to a beat, I just vibe out to it. And I'm really doing multiple things all at one time. And when I teach these techniques, I break them down separately, because you got to learn each one separately before you can do them all together and really understand what's going on. So the first thing I do when I play a beat is I just start vibing to it. You know, first thing I do instinctively without even thinking about it is I synchronize with the beat of that instrumental. So my body instantly just starts going with the four count. I listen to it for a moment. My body gets in sync with the four count. Now I'm already in tune with it. Just like I was telling Sam earlier about synchronizing music to a grid, it's really the same thing that you're doing with your body when you listen to a song. Is you're synchronizing with that music. So you are lining up with the pulse or the heartbeat of that music. And as I'm doing that, I'm scatting it. And once again, when I'm scatting, I'm not thinking technical. I'm not trying to be judgmental towards myself. Does it sound good? Does it sound bad? I'm just experimenting. I'm throwing paint on a canvas, and I'm just seeing what looks good, what sounds good. And I'm like, oh. And as I come across stuff that sounds good, I'm just making notes. Like, okay, I like that. I like that. I like that. And if I have the time to work on that song at that moment, then I may go ahead and go right into the song at that point. If not, I may just record myself on a voice recorder. If I'm in the studio, I can just record on my microphone, and that can come back to those ideas later and really bring them out. So that's initially what I do. Now, I'm a fan of writing hooks first. It really depends on where the inspiration of the song is going. Like if I've already got verse ideas, I may go ahead and start jotting some stuff down for the verse while I have those creative ideas. I kind of let the creativity guide me in the beginning. But once that creativity stops, like it's just not overflowing, once I feel like I've captured that, then I may focus, okay, maybe I've got a few bars for the verse or whatever. If I feel like I'm at a stopping point, then I may go right over to the hook. You know, uh, Keep in mind though, before I write any verses, I typically already have a concept for the song, at least a concept. I don't have to have everything mapped out, but I have an idea of what this song is making me feel and what I want to convey in the track. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. You don't have to write your hooks first. Heck, you can write verse 3 and then write verse 2 and then verse 1. You can write backwards. But the point is knowing what your vision is so you know how to get there, even if it's backwards. Like writing the last verse and then filling in the rest. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Doing it either other way is not going to cause it to suffer. It's really all about knowing where you're trying to go, whether that's going forward or starting at the end and going backwards. It's kind of like movies. Have you ever seen a movie before where it starts with the ending? A scene from the ending, like someone just got killed or something drastic just happened, and then it goes 5 years earlier, and then now it's going back and telling the story that led up to that. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. But as far as when I'm writing, typically I'm scatting. So for an example, if I'm writing to an instrumental, I'm just scatting to it. Bastard when they grabbing the liver till we the bloken. Drap a top with the cap at the tap till we the bloken. So I'm doing stuff like that. And then what I'm doing is trying to fill in words, syllables, which are notes. So at that point, I'm trying to translate that cadence into actual meaningful lyrics that lines up with what my vision is for the song. So a lot of times I'll start with maybe the last couple words of a bar, or I may start at the beginning couple of words of the bar. But at that point, I'm trying to figure out what's the word I'm going to use to rhyme. So, we have what we call internal rhymes, and you have what, your external rhymes or your end rhymes that are at the end of a bar. And just start in one of those, because if you have your typical rhyme scheme going at the end of the bar, whatever word that is, that's what you're going to use for the next bar to rhyme. So that's a good place to start. That way you're not writing the verse and then you can't, or the bar, and then you get stuck on the end part and like, I can't think of a word that matches the cadence I'm going for, or a combination of words that matches it based on the other words I've already used. So maybe start there first and then kind of work, beforehand. But no right or wrong way to do it, because at the same time I've written lyrics without any music, and then I go find a beat, or I create a beat, and then I make my lyrics fit. I have a video on that as well, fitting lyrics to a beat. So no right or wrong way to do it. But how do I memorize my raps? That's another good question. I always say this: the way that you eat an elephant is one piece at a time. Do not overwhelm yourself trying to memorize a whole song at one time. Break it down in small sections. I'm talking 2 to 4 bars. For an example, I have a Freestyle Friday community. We got people dropping new rhymes every single Friday in this group. If anyone here doesn't know about it, just ask in the chat and Monica will hook you up with the information on where you can sign up for that. But, I've been absent from submitting my raps because I was doing it like every Friday for a whole year. And then I started, I was memorizing my stuff, and that was difficult, especially when I wrote my lyrics like the day of, or the night before, and I'm trying to memorize, let's say like 8 bars or 12 bars or something like that. And the way that I do it is it's just by repetition. It's using audio and visual together. The visual is like the training wheels on the bike. And so I'll break stuff down in small sections. Let's say I'm focusing on 4 bars. I'm trying to memorize 4 bars. So, typically a verse is 16 bars. And so if you break it down in 4 bar sections, you have a whole verse memorized. So I'll start with 4 bars, and I'm just trying to get the first line. Once I get the first line, then I focus on the second line. And once I get the second line, then I go back to the first line. And now I'm rapping the first and the second line together as I'm trying to memorize the third line. So at that point, I may just keep rapping the third line over and over and over again, looking at the visual, which is whether it's paper or your tablet or phone or whatever. I'll look at it a couple times and I close my eyes or look away and then try to do it. And at that point, I'm working my brain in a way that's causing it to work harder, because it's not using those training wheels, which is that visual. And to me, that's what really causes the memorization really to happen, is when you rip off those training wheels and now you're forced to recall memory. And then it's okay if you mess up. You are going to mess up. This is part of the process. And once you mess up, then go back to the visual, do it a couple more times looking at it, then look away again, and just keep doing that back and forth in small sections. So start off with the first bar, work your way to 4 bars, and then as you get 4 bars, always keep going back to the beginning and wrapping it down now, regurgitating what you've already memorized as you keep going further down the line. So I also have an article on that on my website. It's called How to Memorize Your Lyrics. So check that out. Hopefully that was helpful. Joshua asks, is it okay to write songs about your friends' experiences if you were a huge part of them and helped them through it, or would it be better to stick to my own experiences? Really good question, Joshua. I'm really glad you brought that up, because a lot of times us as rappers, we kind of put ourselves in a box, because once again, you're not just a rapper, you're an artist. What an artist does, imagine you're a filmmaker, right? Would you make every film just about yourself? Would you be the star of maybe if you're Kanye West, right? But a lot of filmmakers, they're telling all types of stories. And you can do that as an artist, as a rapper. You don't always have to rap from your own perspective. In fact, I encourage you not to, because that opens up way more possibilities. And a lot of people feel quite restricted when they only rap from their own personal perspective, because let's just be honest. A lot of us, we live pretty boring lives. Like if you're just rapping about, man, the guy at McDonald's short of my change, and I'm gonna go home and write a song about that. Or, man, my mom keeps telling me I need to clean my room. I'll write a song about it. That's cool, but and you can make those things fun and interesting, but a lot of times you have to over exaggerate those type of things to make them entertaining. Movies do it as well all the time. Based on a true story, this summer, are you ready? Based on a true story. They use that very lightly, very loosely. Um, so feel free to be creative. There's nothing, disingenuous about it. Um, One song does not define you. And I think some artists feel that pressure that like every song has to be almost like an autobiography, and it doesn't. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. You can tell fictitious stories that aren't real. Um, I think one of the gifts of life is all the experiences you have, and a big part of your experiences is people that you know, the stories they tell you, and a lot of times it's our responsibility as creative people is to share those stories with other people and do it, like be a voice for people who don't have a voice necessarily in that creative sense. Like maybe they don't have the drive or the initiative to like openly express those things that they may have shared with you. I mean, I've got lots of ideas for songs that are really based on my friends and things they've been through and stories they've told me. I can totally use that and write a song about it, and I don't have to act like it's me. I can tell it in a way to where I'm clearly talking about other people. Um, and I'll tell you something else too. I was working with one of my other students on a song, and the song was talking about some really personal stuff, like really personal stuff. And the way that we presented that information was the way that he was telling the story of the song was he's talking about a kid. And he's going through and he's telling you about how this kid was abused, how he was neglected by his mom, all these personal things, just kind of a messed up childhood. And as he's talking about this kid, towards the end of one of his verses, he says, "Man, I wish it was a story because that kid, it was me." So that's also another unique way is you can make people think you're talking about someone else, but you're talking about yourself, and you bring it back, boom, hit them hard, bring the hook in or whatever. Songwriting is so many different ways you can do it. So definitely don't be afraid to write about different topics. Once again, check out my article on what should you rap about. I lay down all types of different ideas and stuff. You could write a song about a new video game that came out or a new movie that came out or a character in a movie, and you could write a diss track against them or something. Like, you can have fun. You can do whatever you want to. And I encourage that. Don't put yourself in a box, and don't let no one else put you in a box either. Just be yourself and have fun. Make the music that you want to hear. Radiated Planet. Cole, what is the best way to promote my music? Wow. So that's a question that always comes up. I would highly recommend you check out Wendy Day on YouTube. Wendy Day. WENDYDAY. She actually does a live stream every Wednesday, just like me. She comes on a little bit before me. This is a huge topic. It's not something I can give you like a quick answer for it, but there's a lot of components that go into that. What's the best way to promote my music? In order for me to say that, I would have to know you personally. I would have to know how much money you have for a budget, how much money you have to invest in marketing, how much time you have to invest, those type of things. But let's just say I assume, and this is just assuming, let's just say you don't have hardly any budget at all. Maybe you can scrape up a couple $100, which isn't nothing for marketing and promoting. Then it's going to take you some time. Still going to take you some money. It's going to take you a lot of time. And if I were you, if I was to advise anybody wanting to market and promote their music, you got to start getting busy about building real relationships with people, taking the time to actually, hit people up, find people who will be interested in your music. You may say, well, how is that possible? How do I know who's interested in my music? Well, ask like 5 or 10 people that you like, that know you, and people who don't know you, ask them to listen to your music and ask them what they honestly think about it. And if you're getting a lot of people, and it's best to let people know that it's not your music. So they're unbiased and they tell you the truth. Like, hey man, look, man, I just checked out this artist, man. Tell me what you think about him. If you're getting a lot of people say your stuff sucks, then you don't need to be wondering what's the best way to promote your music at this time. You need to work on perfecting your craft. Because trust me, you do not want to get a lot of promotion behind a bad product. You want to have a good product to promote. But let's just assume that the product is good. One thing that you can do is figure out what artists do you feel like you're similar to. Not exactly alike, but what artists do you get compared to? Well, what do people say? Man, you remind me of so and so. One simple way to start getting more fans, if your music is quality, you can start finding out who their fans are. You can go on Twitter, find out who's following them and talking to them and really showing support. And you can start building relationships with them, engaging with them, start just interacting with them. I'm telling you, this works. I've done it. Actually, my logo that I use for Cold Mine Studios, that's a logo from a tattoo artist who's amazingly talented at what he does. Graphic designer, graffiti artist, everything. Out from Cali, I met him in that fashion because he was a fan of an artist that I'm a fan of, that some people have compared me to, and we just started a genuine conversation. And then that led to us being cool. I still stay connected with him to this day. I know his name. I know where he lives at. That's what I'm talking about. That takes time. He's somebody who still reaches out to me if he has a question about anything, anything that pertains to my expertise, and I could reach out to him vice versa. That takes time and that's work. But that's where the real magic happens, is when you start building real relationships with people, when you start adding value to other people's lives, when people have at least a little bit of a sense who you are, and you give them the common courtesy to show them that you care about them. You'll be amazed at how excited or interested they actually are in checking out your music at that point, because you're a real human being to them. You're not just that dude with some logo like a green egg or something on Twitter, or a purple egg or whatever it is, saying, hey, yo, check out my new hit single, fam. Subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, buy my single. Like, no one's going to support you like that, because they don't care. They don't care about you because they don't know who you are. And you gotta make people care about you, and the best way to make people care about you is to show them that you care about them first. And that's work. And you can apply this same concept to anything. If you're a new kid at school, you have no friends, you're in the same position as an artist with no fans. Think about it like that. So how do you make friends? Someone has to take the initiative to start the conversation. Someone has to. And once people start getting to know you, guess what? If they like you, they tell their friends about you. And you just keep going on from there. If you go to a party and you don't hardly know anybody there, you have to take the initiative to start conversations, or you're going to be that awkward guy in the corner that no one's talking to because he's not talking to anyone else. So you have to be the person to take the initiative. Apart from that, building distribution lists like blog websites, finding online radio stations, digital distribution through companies like TuneCore to get your stuff on iTunes, Amazon Music, all that stuff. Anyway, it's a big topic, and there's no way I can really even do it justice, but I want to just give you that little overview. Check out Wendy Day's YouTube channel. Tell her I sent you. She's awesome. I'm telling you, she's a jewel. She really is a jewel when it comes to the music industry. This is a woman who knows what she's talking about. She's got a lot of your favorite artists' record deals, and she's legit. She's the real deal, and she's putting out lots of awesome free content, just like I am, for rappers. And it's from a business side of things, and she talks about promotion and marketing a lot. So check her out. All right, and we're gonna wrap these up, y'all. I still got a couple more questions. I'm a little bit long-winded with these questions, but I know I'm doing them justice, so it's all good. So I'm gonna answer these last few questions, then we're gonna be wrapping it up. Time flies, man. The reporter of the memes. That's a funny name. Rap coach. Is it possible to place an EQ on an 808? Yeah, absolutely. Just a matter of, why are you EQing the 808? Are you trying to remove high end and trying to make it more low end? If for some reason there was high end on it. But yeah, you can certainly, EQ an 808. You can put distortion on the 808, compression on the 808, absolutely. Um, so yeah, so if you have questions as far as like how to like mix 808s, then definitely just search YouTube, man. There's so many great tutorials out here. You know, you got people like Busy Works Beats, who does a phenomenal job on his channel, and there's a lot of others that create really good content when it comes to mixing and producing. I know how to do all those things, but I specialize in teaching rap. These guys specialize in teaching production and mixing and stuff like that, and they're really good at what they do. So check them out. Just search, do some googling, like how to mix hip hop beats or trap beats or 808s, you know, and check that out. I'll tell you this though, one of the keys with 808s is you got to make sure your drums are tuned correctly, because if not, it's not gonna sound good. So you got to make sure your 808's tuned. But yeah, just do some Google foo, and lots of good information out there. Hey Cole, A Game, what's up? What's up? Hey Cole, what's your opinion on live shows versus stuff like SoundCloud, iTunes, etc. to gain a fan base? So if you're doing live show, here's the question: how do you do a live show when you don't have fans? It's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You got to have fans to do a live show. So unless you're doing like an open mic and you're opening up for other people, which is a great way to get yourself in front of others for sure. Your fan base is your currency. That's the most valuable thing you could have as a fan base. And that's why it's so important for independent artists to have control over their own fan base. Like, what I mean by that is to own your fan base, meaning you have a direct way to communicate with your fan base. That's why I'm not a huge fan of people just selling their stuff off iTunes, because if someone just buys something off iTunes and it's not an existing fan of yours, let's say it's someone new who comes across your YouTube channel, and they're like, man, A Game is off the hook. And then, of course, you proudly let them know on the bottom of your single, hey, man, because you want them to know you're legit. Man, go get my stuff on iTunes, support your boy, leave me a review or whatever. But here's the thing. When they go to iTunes is going to take about 30%, usually about 30 cents on the dollar. iTunes is also going to get their email address, not you. And you will never know who that person is unless they actually take the initiative to let you know, like shoot you an email, like go to your website, find out what your email is, or send you, put a comment on YouTube or whatever. You have the potential of losing that fan, and you have no direct communication with them. And that's what I mean by owning your fan bases. You always want to be thinking about that, because if you have your own like mailing list, for an example, like I do, y'all know that's how I keep in touch with everybody. It's how I let everybody know about anything that I'm doing. If you have that, that's powerful. So for an example, let's say you have 20,000 people on your mailing list. Say 20,000. For whatever reason, you have a strong amount of people on your mailing list in Texas. Say Houston, Texas. For whatever reason, you've got a lot of people, and the way you know that is because if you have a mailing list, you have analytics. You can tell where your people are who have subscribed to you. So let's say there's 5,000 people on your mailing list that's in Texas. Then you can send an email out to specifically those people in Texas and ask them, like, hey, if I were to do a show in your area, would you be interested? And then from there, once you get a commitment, you can actually pre-sell tickets and stuff like that. And then boom, you can book a venue. I'm telling you right now, you step to any venue and you're like, look, I'm bringing out 200 people. You will not have no problem getting no venues. I'm telling you, because that's all that matters. They want you to put people in seats or bring people through the doors so they buy drinks or buy food or whatever, because that's making that business money. So they need that. So if I were you, I would think of SoundCloud, doing live shows, iTunes. All of that is a means of one thing, is gaining fans and staying connected with them. So if you're doing shows, you need to be thinking, how can I get that person's email address? Stay connected with them. If you're sending someone to iTunes, you need to be thinking, before I send them there, how can I get that person's email address so I can stay connected with them? If you're walking around in the grocery store and someone happens to come up to you and say, hey, yo, I checked out some of your music, man, I really like it. You like, the first thing that comes to your mind is, I need to get that person's email address. I need to stay connected with them, because that's the most valuable thing that you can have. That's more important than album sales. It's more important than how many views you got on YouTube. It don't matter. How many fans do you have? That's what really matters. And so whenever you're doing anything, anybody who shows support for what you're doing, you need to make sure that you're getting them locked in to a mailing list of some sort to where you can stay directly connected to them, because that's better than any type of social media, anything like that, because that's a message going directly to them, like a text message, which is another great way to stay connected with your fan base, opposed to you making a post on Twitter or Facebook, because once you make that post, Facebook is monetized. Twitter is also monetized, meaning that their algorithm is really funky, because if you're not paying to promote your stuff, everyone's not going to see it. If you don't believe me, when you get a chance, go to someone's fan page on Facebook who has 1 million likes. Just go there and tell me how many people are actually liking each post and engaging with it compared to how many likes they get. The reason why is because everyone's not seeing those posts, because Facebook makes you pay for that. But guess what? If you have your own fan base, your own mailing list, you own it. That's what I mean. Own your fan base. So hopefully that helps. Okay, let me knock out these last 2 questions and we're going to finish it up. This has been great, man. I've been having a blast. Hot Skies. Hi, I'm a really old guy. How do I get radio guys to take me seriously? Thanks, Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura, wow. Let me tell you something, Jesse. I know you've been the governor of Minnesota. You've done things that I wouldn't believe, that would blow my mind. So, really old guy. How do I get radio guys to take me seriously? Who says they have to take you seriously? You know what? This is going back to what I was just talking about with A Game about a fan base. That's what you need, is a fan base, not radio guys. Radio guys and anybody else is going to take notice of you once you build a fan base first. So trying to get radio plays on the radio is tough when you don't have a fan base, because once again, what's the radio doing? They're trying to go after viewership. They're trying to play what people want to hear. If you just go up to a DJ in a club and you're like, play my song, don't be mad if he doesn't do it, because the people who came to that club that night came to listen to music they are already familiar with. That's once you put on a song they're not familiar with it, even if it's cool, even if it's good, a lot of times you'll see them, they're not going to be as into it because it's not familiar with it, familiar with them. So your job is to build your fan base up first. And then once again, once you have a fan base, now you have leverage in any situation. When you can step to a radio DJ and be like, look, I got X amount of fans in this demographic, and you can have your fans request your song on that radio, and they will call you up. They'll be like, Jesse, look, we want to play your song on the radio. How can we make that happen? Can we get the single from you? You got it. Can you give me some radio edits, or can you do a drop for me? Then the whole game changes. And so that's really the trick is, if you want to do shows, if you're wanting to get on radio, if you're wanting to get interviewed in magazines and stuff like that, you have to build your following up first. And it's the hardest part of just getting that ball started first. But I've already discussed, how you practically get the ball rolling. Of course, use the stuff on the internet as well, apart from building relationships 101, such as, search engine optimization, things of that nature, using keywords that are trending to create content that people are really, gravitating towards, stuff like that. But that's my advice. Man, my advice, screw, you know what I'm saying, what other people think about you, man. Like, if a radio guy doesn't get you, that's cool. Do you know how many artists in the past who have been turned down? The Beatles are one of them, just comes to mind. Eminem, another one, turned down. Jay-Z started his own label because he couldn't get a record deal. Like, everybody faces rejection, because in the beginning, it's not even really about how talented you are, how good your music is. It's all about, man, do you have a fan base? Like, do you really have interest that's built up around you? That's really what the main point is. So it doesn't matter what people think about you. Look, you focus on making music that's true to who you are. It don't matter what age you are, what color you are, religion, belief, gender, none of that stuff. Just be yourself, and you're likely going to figure out that people gravitate towards you that are like you. People typically like you that are like you. So just be yourself. You make an awesome you and a terrible somebody else, right? And everybody else is already taken. So, and I love the quote too. I'd rather be disliked for who I am than liked for who I am not. So that's my advice to you, man. Forget it. It don't matter. If they don't take you seriously, it's okay. Some people are just a day late and $1 short. But as long as they get there, that's all that matters. And last question, and we'll wrap this up. Sonic 12 will ask a really good question. What makes a great artist to you, to me? What makes a great artist? That's a good question. To me, and it's specific to me because this is something that's very subjective to everybody. As they say, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But to me, what makes a great artist is someone who's creative, who's not predictable. I enjoy lyricism, but they don't have to be the most lyrical because some of my favorite rap songs, two of them, one of them is by Tupac, Dear Mama, DMX, Slippin'. Both of those artists aren't the most lyrical, but they're real. And that's really what makes an artist one of my favorites. If it's someone who I feel like who's genuine and who's real, even if it's not something I necessarily want to hear all the time. I don't care for all of Tupac's songs or DMX's songs, but they still made some of my favorite rap songs of all time. Why? Because they're real, and music is dynamic as life is. And sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad. Sometimes a rapper may feel like talking about killing and shooting people. Other times he may be talking about, his love for his mom or his struggles and his outlook on life and not giving up. And he may give a word of encouragement and stuff like that. And I found as I reflect, some of my favorite artists are real, genuine, not afraid to speak their mind. You may call that backpack rappers or non-commercial or underground, not necessarily. For an example, Outkast is one of my favorite rap groups. It's somebody I still study to this day, even like how their songs were produced, arranged, and mixed. But one thing I love about Outkast is Big Boy was more the commercial punchline rapper and stuff like that, but Andre was more of your conscious, really deep, poetic, smart, witty. I love that type of stuff, And at the same time, like someone like Eminem, who does a lot of different things. He's very, very, very diverse. His content now that I'm older doesn't resonate with me as much as it did when I was younger. Cause I'm the type of dude, man. Like when I sit down at night and I want to relax, I'm the type of dude that likes to watch documentaries and learn stuff. I'm a nerd. I really am. I'm a nerd who loves rap, and I'm just always learning stuff. So I like to listen to stuff that stimulates my mind in a good way, like a positive way, something that's going to benefit me from listening to it. And so to me, that's what a good artist is to me. It's someone who's unique, who's genuine, who wears their heart on their sleeve, who speaks their mind, says what they mean and means what they say. Witty. I like lyricism. I like complex rhyme schemes. I like imagery. I like, complex storylines and imagery. With that being said, I don't like just one kind of rapper. I really appreciate many different types of rappers. And like I said, from a DMX to an Andre 3000, that's a big difference. And even a lot of the newer rappers that are coming up, like someone like a Hopsin, for an example. There's a lot of stuff I really like about what Hopsin's doing. And, just like anything, I don't care for everything he puts out. I haven't heard everything, but some stuff I'm like, man, that was so creative. That's an artist right there. And, being an artist is not just about being, doing music. Sometimes it means, your creativity, the way you promote yourself, or your creativity with how you brand yourself, or how you perform on stage, and how you dress, and, how you conduct yourself in interviews, and, how you, the way you set up your music videos and all that stuff. Like a creative person creativity never stops. Creativity is like a muscle, and you can use it with everything in life. So that's my thoughts on that. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, that's it for this evening, everybody. Man, I had a blast answering all y'all's questions. Really good questions. Hopefully something I said stuck and made sense and was helpful to y'all. We're going to pick this up again next week, next Wednesday. Hopefully by then I can have my stuff recorded. If not, we'll just hang out and do this again because this is fun. I enjoy it. But thank y'all all so much for stopping by. I'm going to let y'all go and get on with your evening or morning or wherever you're at in the world, whatever time it happens to be. But if this is your first time being here, then you can go ahead and subscribe right there and get my free ebook. Stay connected, and there's also a video playlist so you can connect with the rest of my videos in this series. So thank y'all so much once again. This is Cole Mize. I'm signing off, and remember, when it comes to rapping, there's no rules. There's only techniques. Peace.